I'm Natasha Hoskins.
I'm Dina Burke, and we are the co-founders of Boys Club. We are here today at the RWA Summit in Brooklyn, New York. We have with us Paul Brody, head of blockchain at Ernst & Young. Welcome to the couch, I suppose, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to start with just some context for you. Are you a Twitter guy? Are you on Twitter?
I am a Twitter guy. I'm at @pbrody on Twitter.
Okay,
Nice.
and what is your bio on Twitter?
It says, it changes from time to time, but it often says rarely right, but never in doubt. And then it has the mandatory corporate tagline that these are my opinions, not necessarily those of my employer.
Very good, very good.
Nice. Okay, what is, give us a little bit about your sort of crypto origin story. How did you get into the space and what sort of inspired you to continue working in it?
So I got into this space almost 10 years ago this year. I was working at IBM, and Samsung, which was a client at the time, came to us and said, hey, we are having problems scaling up all of these smart device networks. And can you think of something that will help make the cost manageable? And so we started looking at distributed computing things, things that would allow smart devices to manage each other. And at first, we got looking at Bitcoin. And after a few months, one of my colleagues came to me and said, Paul, I've met this guy. He wants to do like Bitcoin, but for computing. His name is Vitalik, and I think you should meet him. And I was like, this sounds interesting. And we met Vitalik, and we got really interested. And, long story short, we built IBM's first blockchain. We deployed it with Samsung in a prototype environment. And there's actually, I showed you before, this fun picture of like me, Vitalik, the IBM
Amazing.
crew, the Samsung guys at CES in January 2015, showing off this prototype. And really at that point, like I was hooked. Like I was like, this is revolutionary. It's the future of the industry. I need to make this kind of what I work on.
Incredible. Incredible. Okay, so here we are at the Real World Asset Summit. It's now 10 years later. Things have evolved. Can you explain in like 15 seconds or less, what is a real world asset?
A real world asset is really anything that exists off chain. So it's beyond crypto. It's stuff that exists off chain. And from my point of view, it's really got to be the foundation of all of the growth we're going to see in the future, which is using blockchains to manage business activities of the things that exist in the real world.
Okay, so with that in mind, why tokenization?
Tokenization is incredibly important because blockchains are natively designed to buy, sell, and transact tokens. In fact, one of the panelists earlier today gave this wonderful analogy, talked about how containerized shipping made shipping massively scalable. Tokens make any kind of digital asset interoperable and scalable in a way that I can hold it, move it, transact it, manipulate it in a very scalable and programmable way.
Wow, great answer.
Really great answer. And honestly, the shipping container analogy like really lands.
Yeah, brings it to life.
That really brings it to life. Okay. We're going to pivot into the spicy portion of this interview. What's your hottest take on real world assets?
My hottest take on real world assets is that really we are heading for a future where every industrial asset is going to be tokenized and managed on chain. I believe public blockchain, specifically Ethereum, spoiler alert, I wrote a book called Ethereum for Business, is the foundation of all future business-to-business transactions. And real-world assets and tokenization are essential for massively scaling this up and also making the ecosystem of companies transacting with each other more efficient and much more fair instead of creating a bunch of new digital monopolies.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to play a little game of word association. So when I say regulation, you say?
Foundational. This thing doesn't scale without it at all.
What do you think is the single biggest hurdle standing in the way of like responsible or I suppose like reasonable regulation around RWAs?
I think the biggest hurdle is, in my opinion, getting agreement on this question of how can you trust the source and data about a real world asset.
Yeah.
By definition, real world assets are things that don't exist on chain. So you can't just trust the math.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that we've learned from like the last 10 years, it's that you also can't just trust the issuer. So, and again, maybe this is conflict of interest. I come from an audit firm, but I think the only thing that really works is to have third parties systematically inspect and validate these systems. Because without that, I'm going to be spending way too much energy trying to figure out, this looks like a cool thing, but is it real? Can I trust this issuer? Do I really, if I buy this asset, is it what I thought it was?
Great. I'm inspired by this conversation. I'm like, wow, we've got some real use cases here. Okay, so final question. What RWA are you most bullish on and why?
I think the RWA that I'm most bullish on is something really simple, which is inventory. Any kind of inventory asset, supply chain asset. Basically, the way that companies interact with each other is they buy and sell stuff from each other. And if we can figure out how to represent the stuff that companies buy and sell, which is inventory, products, etc., and move it and track it and manage it, we can make supply chains way more efficient. We can make supply chains quite a bit more resilient and secure. And I think if we can solve it for industrial assets that don't require super complex regulation, we will scale nicely into an era of financial assets that are regulated and do require supervision.
Wow. Great. Mic drop moment. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.